Should we scrap net zero laws to save money? Get your calls in for this one now. So the Climate Change Act was introduced in 2008, as we said earlier, by the previous government, Labour government, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It was then strengthened under the former Conservative Prime Minister, Theresa May, to include things like banning the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035 and phasing out gas boilers in new build homes. But current Tory leader Kemi Badenoch claims funds spent on climate change targets is bankrupting the country and would be better spent elsewhere. What do we think about that? Do you agree with Kemi Badenoch? Michael?
Well, I suppose it worries me that we're having this conversation at this particular time, because if you speak to scientists, if you read what they're currently saying, they're saying that climate change is a bigger emergency than even they believed previously. So the hottest year on record, obviously, was last year. That broke the record from the year before. So climate change is very serious. You remember the UN have agreed that temperature shouldn't go above 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. That's already happened, right? So there's still something to play for, there's still something to fight for, but we're in a really, really worrying situation. And the idea that we would relax our climate commitments in this very moment, I think would be catastrophic, frankly. And
really, we would have no other problems if the Earth just collapsed beneath us. So it is the number one issue, is it not, Reem?
It's absolutely important. I don't think Kemi Badenoch is saying that it isn't. I mean, very clearly climate change is an issue and it is something that has to be addressed. But the question is, are we going to do it in a way that makes us poorer? And the current policy offering is doing exactly that. We have some of the highest industrial energy costs, some of the highest domestic energy costs in the Western world. That means it's much harder for businesses to do every single day things. And the ultimate long-term consequences of that is Britain being poorer. When you look at our energy costs in comparison to other countries, if you look over at the United States, where petrol is about half the price on average than it is in the UK, it really does have an impact on everyday people and ultimately the cost of living. What we need to do instead is to think about how we can create a competitive market in energy. Can we ensure that nuclear energy, for example, is more able to be built? Can we relax some of the regulations around planning in order for that to actually happen in the first place? The way we don't do that is by creating an arbitrary, legally binding target. And so I think that Kemi Badenoch is absolutely right, and we need to repeal and get rid of the net zero target.
I mean, Reem could be right here. Is it worth us all getting poorer when actually, even if we reach net zero, it's going to have no real impact globally?
Well, I think the idea that the target is arbitrary is a bit misleading. So obviously the scientists have said we have to get to net zero by 2050 to have a chance of the Earth being livable on, quite frankly. I think the point about the international scene is important, and lots of people will say, well, what's the point of us getting to net zero when other countries might not? We should appreciate that it's actually China that's taking the lead when it comes to making sure that renewable electricity is cheap. So we're not exactly taking the lead. I mean, it's the Chinese who are doing the work when it comes to the technology. I think what's important about us maintaining this net zero platform is there's the argument about moral leadership. Obviously, we want everyone to get there. But there is also a technical issue, because one of the main things we need to work out in terms of getting to net zero is how to make systems work without high emissions, without having fossil fuels involved. So if we prove it can be done, then it's much easier to ask other countries to do the same.
The only way you can do that is having a genuinely competitive market in energy, and the government have restricted the way in which we're allowed to access that energy. I mean, it's economics 101, right? If you restrict the supply, then prices will go up. We have some of the highest energy bills in the Western world, and also part of this is where we've got people like Ed Miliband yesterday saying he wants to complete ban on fracking, which will make this country poorer. Okay. Now, Michael is right. We do need to think about energy security in the long term. But the way you do that is not government-led. You have to allow a competitive market in energy.
All right, let's go to the calls. Becky from Surrey. How do you feel about this? Do you think we're spending too much money on net zero?
Absolutely, I do, yes. I think that we just don't have the funding within the UK at the moment to support it. It's basically it's an intermittent supply of energy that we just cannot store, and the infrastructure is not in place across the UK to support it. So
you're talking about renewables here, and I understand your argument there. What about the argument that we are a developed nation, so we are financially in a better position than some countries to invest in these technologies, and they will take time to develop, and we don't have everything perfect at the moment, but we're in a much better position to be investing in that than some other countries in the world, so we could get the technology to pass on to save the planet?
Are we in a better position now?
Well, we're a developed country.
We
we're certainly in a better position than some
We
African
absolutely are,
nations.
but financially, we're not in a better position at all.
Becky's right. No, Becky's right. I mean, we are experiencing 0% growth in July. In the 3 months to July, we experienced 0.2% growth. We are a poor country. Britain is a poor country. People don't realise how utterly abysmal the current situation is, and net zero is part of the problem.
I wonder whether we're poor in comparison to previous generations, but actually in comparison to the globe. I don't know if that's true, Becky.
It's kind of not the point, though, Storm.
Okay.
It's absolutely, we are not in a financial position to support it.
But
we
Becky,
are, in order to,
Sorry, Becky, the question would be, when will we be in a financial position to be able to afford it? Because if it is to believe that the climate crisis is causing more mass immigration, and if it is to be believed that immigration is causing us all to be poorer, people coming to this country, and our resources to be dwindling because of that, this is just going to be a problem that gets worse and worse and worse. If the climate change gets worse, we're going to have more people coming to this country, and we're going to be poorer and poorer. Isn't it better to put a stop to that now?
Well, the climate change discussion is another completely different discussion, because that's argued in very different ways as well. So,
do you not believe that we're in a climate crisis, Becky?
I think there's definite rise in CO2 gases in the whole of the world. But, you know, there are other issues around that. So what the scientists are saying is that the heat is coming from the inner core of the world and is not because of industrialization or any of those
Becky,
other things.
I'm not sure that is what the scientists are saying. So obviously, I absolutely agree. There's lots of...
That's what the scientists are saying that I've seen and watched.
So
I've watched plenty of podcasts on climate change and things like that.
So there's something called the IPCC, which is a UN body. It gets together all the top climate scientists in the world.
But they decide who those scientists are, don't they?
No, but you must agree that climate change is caused by CO2 and not coming from the Earth's inner core.
I absolutely
With all due
climate
respect,
change...
Becky, I'm not sure what legitimate scientists are suggesting.
Absolutely, but where I do think Becky has a point is actually the fact that people talk about this as an emergency in the way that they do. And I think that what you end up seeing is a lot of young people that are afraid to have children because they're so afraid of the climate emergency.
Apparently that's the worst thing you could do for your carbon footprint, and I've got
to have children. You have maternity leave, feeling very guilty, Storm. No, look, I mean, it isn't... Yes, it is absolutely something to be concerned about, but no, you should not stop having children because you're afraid of climate change.
OK, Becky, thank you for your call. Edward from Lancashire. I'm going to try and get us through as many calls as I can. What's your view on this?
I was just listening on the programme, and the gentleman there was saying that we're buying all these things from China. Are we sure that they're using net zero production techniques?
Well,
or are they just doing whatever they want to do to make them? Because they come out so cheap.
Not exclusively, but Michael was just saying that they are investing in renewables.
So China, basically, they make a lot. So their emissions are quite high, but what they're very good at is building out solar capacity. So China in the last year built out more solar capacity than the rest of the world combined.
Yeah, but
so they're doing an awful lot in terms of
pollution by purchasing that from them.
Yeah. So
and what is the savings? If we save 1% of the small amount from the UK, based on the amount of production that they have to make and pollution that they have to cause to make that amount of units we need, is one outweighing the other.
Well, so
and what are the figures? Has anybody looked?
Well, so I think there's two arguments there. So one is, are we just importing our emissions? And to some degree, we are. But actually, it's also the case that where we're importing those goods from, they are also doing their own green transition. As I say, China is massively increasing its solar capacity every year. So I don't think we need to sort of assume that we're just replacing this with fossil fuels from elsewhere. In terms of the fact that we're only 1% of emissions because we're only 1% of people, I do think it is very important that we take some historical responsibility. The Industrial Revolution started here, and also show the example that you can get to net zero, because I do think that will help in terms of other countries joining us in that journey.
Can I just add to that point very quickly? I mean, you're absolutely right about the Industrial Revolution, and that is how we became a wealthy country. How we became wealthier and how the West became wealthier is the Industrial Revolution. It's the free exchange. And that is exactly how we will solve climate change. I'm a climate change optimist. I think that we absolutely will be able to develop the technologies required in order for us to have cheap and abundant energy.
Who's investing in that development?
Private companies. I do not want taxpayers to be footing the bill at all.
OK, Edward, thank you very much for your call. Andy from Devon, what's your view?
Yeah, I just think it's an absolute scam. This climate crisis, this green agenda, the net zero, all of it is just a scam. And if you look at the way they've gone about it with, like, I mean, just looking at something like electric cars with the lithium costs and how the car itself is a battery car. Yeah, it looks really green and efficient. But then you look at all the other factors to get to that point where you've got that car through the lithium and everything else. It's just utter nonsense.
I mean, that is one of sort of Kemi Badenoch's criticisms, I suppose, is that some of the targets aren't even worth really reaching. And if we look at electric cars, for example, we did, Michael, think that they were maybe the silver bullet that was going to help us reduce our emittance and pollution. They haven't really been. We've discovered that the batteries are causing issues across the world. We've discovered that actually they're heavier, so they're tearing up more of our roads. And the production of a new electric car, if you're just going to bin your petrol one, it's not great for the environment.
So a sensible thing to do wouldn't be, if you've got a new car that's got no problems with it, don't dump that car and buy an electric car, because any big object like that has a lot of emissions in its production. But if you're replacing an old car, then absolutely, I think everyone pretty much agrees that it would be better for the environment for you to replace that car with an electric car. So yes, obviously there are emissions involved in batteries. By the way, batteries are now 90% cheaper than they were a decade ago. So these things are all improving. The technology is getting more efficient.
It's the substances that we need to make the batteries, I believe,
like
that are
lithium,
causing problems in other parts of the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, unless we stop having economic growth and we stop producing things, there will be problems. Obviously, when we're getting oil out of the ground, that also causes a lot of environmental problems. And then when we burn it, that causes even more. So,
but that's why we need
costs.
Economic choice, right? That's the point. I think individual people should be allowed to make those choices for themselves. And that's basically how the market works. If people make those choices, we can see exactly what the evidence looks like in the future. What I don't want, and that is what net zero does, is the government is telling people what they can and cannot do, what kind of cars they're allowed to drive, how much money they're allowed to spend on certain things, how cheap their energy bills will be. And that is the fundamental problem with net zero.
OK, Frank from Buckinghamshire, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, hi. I think Kemi Badenoch's plans to scrap the targets for net zero are ridiculous. The majority of scientists around this world are saying we're destroying the planet at a rapid rate through global warming, etc. And if we don't reach that figure, and the rest of the world don't reach these figures, we are going to make the planet unlivable.
Yes.
And I'm an old bloke of 70. It doesn't matter too much to me, but I've got children and grandchildren. Yeah. I want this planet left in a state where they can live. So if it does make us a little bit poorer, then so be it. But I don't think it is making us poorer. Yes, there are problems around the electric cars and lithium and all the rest of it, but we can work through those problems. We've still got to live. And one more thing, please. I don't know the lady's name that's there. She said we're a poor country, Lynn. We're the sixth richest country in the world.
And we've not seen any real wage growth in the last few years. Frank, you said you're in your 70s. What would you say to the argument that a lot of pensioners can't afford to heat their homes because of net zero, because of our extremely expensive energy?
It's not because of net zero. It's because the way things are run in this country.
Because we have extremely restricted energy supply. That's why. Because we are experiencing restrictions on the way we're allowed to frack. We are actually importing a lot of this oil and gas anyway.
Well, it's also partly because Tory NIMBYs wouldn't have onshore wind. So you had a lot of wealthy Tory NIMBYs in the countryside who said, we don't want you to build power lines.
A lot of Green NIMBYs, a lot of Lib Dem NIMBYs. There's NIMBYs in every party, of course. And I think you're right, Michael. The NIMBYs are the problem, which is why, can we agree, we need to build more nuclear?
I'm up for building more nuclear, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you know, it's the first time I think this week we've managed to end a debate with some sort of unity. So let's just leave it there. Frank, thank you so much for your call and we'll move on.